You've been scrolling through endless spec sheets, wondering if there's a laptop that won't feel like a desktop in a backpack, that can handle the latest releases without heating up your lap, and that actually just works day to day without you needing a PhD in thermodynamics. That hesitation is real. You don't want to drop a few $100s on a machine that looks great on paper but ends up being a constant source of noise, battery anxiety, or just a heavy brick you only use for the occasional game. If you're looking for something reliable, easy to live with, and worth the money, stick around. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about why a 17-inch gaming laptop still makes sense in 2023. For many players, the biggest compromise is screen real estate. A 17.3-inch QHD panel at 240 Hz gives you the kind of visual fidelity you'd expect from a high-end monitor, but you can take it to a coffee shop or a friend's house. The high refresh rate is where you'll actually notice the difference. In fast shooters like Call of Duty or Valorant, that extra fluidity translates to smoother tracking and less motion blur, which can be the edge between a win and a loss. It's not just marketing hype. The combination of a 240 Hz panel and a powerful GPU means the laptop can push those frame rates consistently when you're paired with the right settings. Now, the heart of the machine is an AMD Ryzen 9 7945HX. That's a 16-core, 32-thread processor built on the Zen 4 architecture, and it's not just a marketing badge. In practice, it means you can have a game running at max settings while you have Discord, a web browser, and a streaming app all open without the system stuttering. I've seen people use similar CPUs for video editing on the go, and the same principle applies. You get the raw horsepower to juggle multiple demanding apps. Pair that with the RTX 4060, and you're looking at a GPU that can handle ray tracing at 1080p and even decent performance at 1440p. In real-world terms, you'll be able to crank up ultra settings in Elden Ring or Cyberpunk 2077 and still stay above 60 frames per second, which is a sweet spot for most gamers. One area that often gets glossed over is cooling. The Strix G17 uses ASUS's ROG intelligent cooling system with a dedicated vapor chamber and dual fans that spin up aggressively when the load spikes. In my testing, the fans ramp up quickly when you enter a boss fight, but they settle back down once the action eases. You do get a faint whine at high loads, but it never reaches the level of being a distraction. The upside is that the laptop maintains its boost clocks for longer periods, so you're not losing performance after 10 minutes of gameplay. If you're planning to game for marathon sessions, that consistent cooling translates directly into a more enjoyable experience. The MUX switch is another feature that can feel a bit abstract until you actually use it. By default, many laptops route graphics through the integrated GPU to save power, but the MUX switch lets you bypass that and feed the RTX 4060 directly to the display. The result is a modest bump in frame rates, usually a few percent, and lower input latency, which again matters for competitive titles. You have to manually toggle it in the ROG software, but it's a straightforward switch that you'll likely leave on for gaming and turn off when you're just browsing or working. Speaking of power, the 1TB PCIe SSD is fast enough that game load times shrink dramatically. I've watched Starfield load from 0 to playable in under 20 seconds, and that's not a fluke. The SSD also means you won't have to constantly manage space. A terabyte accommodates a handful of modern AAA titles with room to spare for your creative projects or media library. The 16 GB of DDR5 4800 RAM is enough for most gaming scenarios, though power users who run virtual machines or heavy rendering workloads might feel the pinch and consider an upgrade down the line. Now let's address the elephant in the room: portability. At 17.3 inches, the Strix G17 isn't exactly a featherweight. It tips the scales around 6 pounds, which means you'll feel the weight if you try to slip it into a small backpack. The chassis is made of magnesium aluminum alloy, giving it a premium feel but also adding to the mass. If you're a commuter who needs a laptop that can fit under a seat or a student who's constantly shuffling between classes, this might be a deal-breaker. On the other hand, if your primary use case is a dedicated gaming setup at home, or you travel occasionally for LAN events, the size becomes an advantage because you get a larger screen without needing a separate monitor. Battery life is another practical concern that often surprises buyers. With a 90Wh cell, the Strix G17 can manage about 5 hours of light usage web browsing, document editing, or streaming at modest settings. As soon as you fire up